What happens when one of Hollywood's most intense actors sits down with a talk show host who refuses to stay in his lane? What unfolds when careful media training collides with unpredictable celebrity ego? The result was an explosive episode that left viewers stunned and social media in chaos. The stage was set for disaster from the moment Tom Hardy walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel Live set. The British actor, known for his intense method acting and fiercely private nature, had come to promote his latest film. What no one expected was that Kimmel had prepared an ambush that would turn a simple promotional appearance into a career-defining confrontation. Trouble began even before the cameras rolled. Sources backstage revealed that Hardy's publicist had provided a clear list of topics off-limits: his past struggles with addiction, his divorce, and his clashes with directors. These kinds of boundaries weren't unusual, but Kimmel had other plans. As Hardy settled into the guest chair, adjusting his leather jacket and brushing a hand through his hair in that familiar nervous gesture, the audience could sense something was off. The usual light banter felt strained. Kimmel's opening questions about the new film seemed harmless, but there was an edge underneath them. "So, Tom, you're known for really disappearing into your roles," Kimmel began with his trademark smirk. "Some of your co-stars say working with you can be challenging." Hardy's jaw tightened. "Commitment to the craft is what separates good actors from great ones. If that makes me challenging, I'll wear that badge with honor." That should have been Kimmel's cue to move on. But he didn't. "Right," Kimmel pressed. "But there are reports from your latest film that you had some pretty heated exchanges with the director. Some people say you're becoming difficult to work with." The studio atmosphere changed instantly. Hardy's publicist, visible in the wings, gestured frantically for the producers to intervene. Hardy sat back, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't the interview he'd agreed to. This was an interrogation. "There's a difference between being difficult and being professional," Hardy said quietly. "But tell me, Jimmy, where are you getting these reports? Because I'd love to know who's been talking about my work ethic behind my back." Kimmel grinned. "Come on, Tom. This is Hollywood. Everyone talks. There are whispers about your behavior on set, your demands, your, let's call them, episodes. The audience wants to know the real Tom Hardy." The word episodes hung in the air like a weapon. Hardy's struggles with addiction were well known, but deeply personal. Something he'd fought hard to overcome. Kimmel's choice of words wasn't lost on him. "Episodes?" Hardy repeated, his voice dropping low. "You need to be very careful with your words, Jimmy. Because if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, then we have a problem." The audience shifted uneasily. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was confrontation. Kimmel raised his hands in mock surrender. "Hey, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying your reputation is complicated. You've got this brooding, mysterious thing going, but behind the scenes, people say you're unpredictable, that you have outbursts." Hardy leaned forward, eyes locked on Kimmel. "Outbursts? You want to see an outburst, Jimmy? Because I can show you what an outburst looks like." The threat was no longer hidden. Crew members began to edge closer to the set. Kimmel, realizing he'd pushed too far, tried to soften his tone. "Let's keep this friendly, okay? I'm just asking the questions people want answered. You can't blame me for doing my job." "Your job?" Hardy shot back, his voice rising. "Your job is to promote my film, not ambush me with gossip and innuendo. Your job is to be a professional host, not a tabloid journalist fishing for scandal." The confrontation was spiraling out of control. The audience, unsure if it was a bit or something real, began to sense they were witnessing something raw and dangerous. Kimmel, unable to resist one final jab, leaned in. "You know what, Tom? The real issue is that you can't handle real questions. You're so used to people walking on eggshells around you that you've forgotten what actual journalism looks like." Hardy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Journalism? You think this is journalism? You're a comedian who got lucky with a talk show. You're not a journalist. You're not even an interviewer. You're a court jester who's forgotten his place. The insult hit Kimmel like a physical blow. His face flushed red, and for a moment, the carefully constructed persona he'd spent decades perfecting on television cracked. A court jester? Really? Coming from someone who makes a living pretending to be other people? Kimmel shot back. At least I'm honest about what I do. Hardy's voice rose, sharp and defiant. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't hide behind jokes and cheap shots. When I create a character, I commit to it completely. You've been playing the same shallow character every night. And it's getting old. The audience fell completely silent. It was the kind of uneasy quiet that descends when everyone realizes they're witnessing something that should never be happening in public. Even the band leader, sensing disaster, tried to break the tension with a few notes, but the sound only made the moment more surreal. You want to talk about commitment? Kimmel sneered, abandoning all professionalism. Let's talk about your commitment to sobriety. Word around town is that you're not as devoted to that as you like people to think. The words detonated like a bomb. Hardy's publicist leapt up from her chair, shouting, "That's enough!" But her voice was drowned out by the audience's collective gasp. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was personal warfare, live on television. Hardy stood so abruptly his chair nearly toppled over. His face drained of color, then flushed with fury. "You just crossed a line you can never uncross," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "How dare you bring up my sobriety? How dare you use my personal struggles as material for your pathetic excuse for entertainment?" Kimmel, realizing he'd gone too far but too proud to retreat, snapped back. "Hey, you're the one who made it public. You wrote about it. You can't put something out there and act like it's off limits when someone brings it up. There's a difference between sharing your story to help others and having some talk show hack. Use it for cheap ratings," Hardy replied, his voice rising with conviction. "You don't care about recovery or addiction. You're exploiting people's pain for entertainment." The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud. Producers in the wings were frantically making phone calls. The director signaled for a commercial break, but Kimmel waved him off. He was locked in now, no matter the cost. "Oh, please," Kimmel scoffed. "Don't act like you're some noble hero fighting for the downtrodden. You're an actor who got famous playing tough guys. The whole brooding, tortured artist act. It's just that, an act." Hardy's response was immediate and cutting. "At least my act has depth. At least I'm trying to tell stories that matter." "What's your story, Jimmy? Making fun of people? Tearing others down to feel relevant? You're a parasite feeding on other people's talent and pain." That word, parasite, landed like a slap. Kimmel's face twisted with anger as his mask of charm completely fell away. "You know what? I've had enough of your pretentious garbage," he spat. "You think you're better than everyone because you brood and call it art. But the truth is, you're just another Hollywood egomaniac with a substance abuse problem." The studio froze. Even the crew stopped moving. Hardy's publicist rushed toward the stage, but Hardy raised a hand to stop her. His rage had cooled into something quieter and far more dangerous. "You want to know what my problem is, Jimmy?" Hardy said, his voice calm and razor-sharp. "My problem is that I believed you were a professional, that I trusted your producers when they said this would be a respectful interview, that I gave you the benefit of the doubt when everyone warned me you're a petty man who gets his kicks from humiliating your guests." Every word landed with surgical precision. Kimmel tried to interject, but Hardy wasn't done. "You sit behind that desk night after night, mocking people who actually create something. You ridicule actors, politicians, anyone who dares to take risks. But what do you create, Jimmy? Nothing. You comment on other people's lives because you're too afraid to live your own." The psychological battle had reached its breaking point. Neither man was willing to back down. Kimmel's face turned crimson as he made one last attempt to regain control. You know what, Tom? You're right. I do comment on other people's lives. And right now, I'm commenting on yours. You're a washed-up actor who peaked with Mad Max and has been chasing that high ever since. Your career's in free fall, your personal life's a mess, and you're lecturing me about contribution? At least people still watch my show. That was the final straw. Hardy's eyes went cold. When he spoke, his voice was low and deadly. Washed up? You think I'm washed up? Let me tell you what washed up really looks like, Jimmy. Washed up is sitting behind a desk every night, recycling the same tired jokes for the same tired audience. It's building a career off other people's success. It's being so desperate for relevance that you'll attack a man's sobriety just to go viral. He began pacing, slow and deliberate, his presence filling the room. The confrontation had gone far beyond entertainment. It had become something raw, personal, and irreversible. You want to talk about my recent films? Let's talk about your recent ratings. Let's talk about how you're losing viewers to comedians who don't need to rely on cheap shots and personal attacks. Let's talk about how everyone in this town knows you're a bully hiding behind comedy. The studio audience was completely transfixed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was raw, unfiltered human conflict unfolding live. Kimmel's band had stopped playing, and even the cameramen seemed unsure where to point their lenses. You think you're intimidating me? Kimmel shot back, his voice trembling. You think because you play tough guys on screen you can intimidate me in real life? This is my show, my house, and you're just another guest who's forgotten their place. Hardy stopped pacing and turned to face him. Your house? Your show? You're absolutely right about one thing, Jimmy. Everything that happens here reflects on you. Every cheap shot, every personal attack, every bit of unprofessional behavior, it's all yours. And when people watch this tomorrow, they'll see exactly what kind of man you really are. The truth in Hardy's words hit Kimmel like a physical blow. His producers were signaling desperately for a commercial break, but both men were beyond caring. This wasn't television anymore. It was personal. You think you're better than me? Kimmel shouted. You think because you do serious acting and brood in interviews you're some kind of artist? You're just another pretty boy who got lucky. Without your looks and your accent, you'd be nothing. Hardy's reply was swift and cutting. And without your desk, your writers, and your carefully controlled environment, what would you be? Just another failed comedian telling jokes in empty clubs. At least when I perform, I'm alone up there. I don't need a team of writers to make me interesting. The attacks had turned vicious, and the tension was unbearable. Kimmel's security team edged closer, ready to step in. You know what? Kimmel said, standing up for the first time. I've had enough of this. You came on my show, you agreed to be here, and now you're acting like a victim. If you don't like the questions, there's the door. Hardy laughed, low and humorless. Oh, I'm going to use that door, Jimmy. But not because you're kicking me out. I'm leaving because I have too much respect for myself to waste another second in this room. You're not worth my time, my energy, or my respect. He started toward the edge of the set, but paused. You know what the real tragedy is? You could have had a real conversation with someone who's lived through something. You could have talked about recovery, second chances, the craft of acting. Instead, you chose to be petty and small, because that's all you know how to be. Kimmel, visibly shaken, made one last desperate attempt. Don't walk away from me. This is live television. You can't just leave. Hardy turned back, meeting his gaze. Watch me. The power in those two words silenced the room. Slowly, deliberately, Hardy removed his microphone, never breaking eye contact. This is what integrity looks like, Jimmy. This is what it means to have standards. Maybe you should try it sometime. He tossed the mic onto the guest chair. The sound echoed through the stunned studio. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or just sit in shock. Kimmel stood motionless beside his desk, his expression hollow, the mask of the charming late-night host completely shattered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hardy said, addressing the audience, "I'm sorry you had to see this. You came here expecting entertainment, and instead, you witnessed what happens when someone mistakes cruelty for comedy. I hope you remember the difference." With that, Hardy walked off the set with quiet dignity. His publicist followed, pausing only to give Kimmel a look of pure contempt. For several long moments, the studio was silent. Then, at last, a producer signaled for a commercial break. But it was far too late. The confrontation had been broadcast live, and within minutes, clips were already flooding social media. As the lights dimmed and the audience filed out in uneasy silence, one thing was certain. This wasn't just the end of an interview. It was the end of Jimmy Kimmel's reputation as a professional host, and the beginning of a new chapter in Tom Hardy's career. One defined not by roles or awards, but by the strength to walk away with his dignity intact. The confrontation was over, but its impact would ripple through Hollywood for years to come.